We are here to bring a new type of news show.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generations.
Bringing news just for you. It's Wednesday, July 10th here in Seoul. I'm Song Yujin, and this is News Generation. Today, we're joined by Choi Ji-hee.
Happy Hump Day!
Happy Hump Day, Happy Wednesday, and Lee Jun.
Happy Wednesday!
Happy Wednesday. Now, both are here to speak on behalf of those in their 20s and 30s. Now, as usual, we're going to start with our news feed, which covers different hashtags and news items that have been trending online over the past 24 hours. Korean actor Lee Hae-ri has been awarded the Screen International Rising Star Award at the New York Asian Film Festival for her latest film, Victory. It's been chosen as the opening film of the festival, one of North America's leading Asian film festivals, and will make its world premiere there. It's a comedy drama that follows two high school girls who start a cheerleading club to pursue their love for dance. Lee will attend the festival in person, which will run from July 12th to 28th to receive the honor. On the economic front, eating out in Korea is becoming increasingly more expensive. According to the Korea Consumer Agency on Tuesday, 5 out of the 8 most popular menu choices in Seoul saw on-month price hikes in June. For instance, the average price of naengmyeon or cold noodles rose to 11,923 Korean won, which is around $8.62 from 11,692 won, approximately $8.45. The prices of kimbap, jjajangmyeon, kalguksu, and bibimbap have also increased. Industry insiders attribute these rises to higher ingredient prices and other costs such as wages, rent, and utility bills. Finally, representatives from Korea's labor and management sectors on Tuesday continue their discussions with regards to next year's minimum wage. At the 9th plenary session of the Minimum Wage Commission, the labor side proposed 11,200 won per hour, which is around $8.10, while the management side pushed for 9,870 won, approximately $7.14. This year's minimum wage is 9,861, which is around $7.13. Now, eyes are on whether next year's minimum wage will surpass 10,000 won for the very first time. So here in the studio, as those who are working and have a job, what do you think is the appropriate amount of next year's minimum wage and why?
Well, to be honest with you, the gas cost show us a 6.8% increase in this year. And also the government raised most of the costs, including the gas, water, electricity as well. It may be a little bit unreasonable to freeze wage for workers who are living with the minimum hourly wage in these circumstances with the product, material, and labor cost raises. But however, this may be also a little bit different from the perspective of the business operator and owner.
Right.
Some say is to freeze the minimum hourly wage, but not raise other price either, which is go for equally. But I think it's still the matter that requires the more diverse and deep discussions as well.
Right, because we know where the arguments from both sides are coming from. Right. Everything is becoming expensive, both for consumers and the producers as well. So this is why we're seeing the negotiations continuing to decide the minimum wage. Now, what do you think is the appropriate amount, Chi-hee?
Well, I agree with what Hee-jun has said. And the minimum wage for 2024, if you remember, was set at 9,861.
Right.
And that was only a 2.5 increase from the previous year, and this was the second lowest increase on record. And I think it should reach at least 10,000 won next year, as we're discussing currently, considering that a higher minimum wage, of course, can improve living standards for low-income workers and stimulate the economy. However, like Hee-jun said, some businesses may argue that this can lead to higher operating costs. Hence, it's always a very complex issue with no easy answer. But considering inflation and comparing ourselves with other OECD countries, I think 10,000 won is a reasonable number.
So we'll have to see how much the minimum wage for next year is set. The final number will be determined following further rounds of negotiations where both sides will revise their proposals to reach a consensus. And the Commission is required to announce next year's minimum wage by August 5th. And that was our news feed for this Wednesday. So we're now going to move on to our main discussion of the day. Today we're going to focus on a legal issue involving family disputes that has been making headlines here in Korea for quite a while. Take a look at the screen to find out more.
Recently, several celebrities have been caught in legal battles with their parents. Notably, a former star golf player filed a legal complaint against her father, accusing him of repeatedly failing to pay off his debts. Interestingly, the complaint was filed not by her directly, but by the foundation she manages. Her father was accused of document forgery rather than property crimes. This case highlights a law in Korea that exempts family members from punishment for property crimes against each other. However, the Constitutional Court recently deemed this law unjust and struck it down.
So let's first take a closer look at this law with a specific example. So let's imagine that an adult man, after having a fight with his mother, damages her car with a hammer. So I want to ask you guys, what do you guys think? Do you think this is punishable by law? Please raise O or X depending on your answer. 1, 2, 3. Oh, so both chose O. So would you like to explain why you raised the O sign, Ji?
Well, the adult man's action of damaging his mother's car, although it was his mother's car, is of course property damaging.
Right.
And whenever someone damages someone else's property, regardless of the relationship, whether it be family, is a crime under the Korean Criminal Act Article 350. And the law punishes anyone who destroys or damages another person's property. And the severity of the punishment, however, would depend on the extent of the damage. And of course, the mother does have the right, however, to press these charges, and the situation could be resolved through communication and potentially compensation for the repairs.
I see. Now, is there anything that you'd like to add on, Heejun?
Well, of course, I mean, like, if he broke his parents' properties, it wouldn't be punishable, obviously. Like, what I know is the person who blackmails a person to receive a property or gain the property shall be punished by imprisonment for 10 years or fined at 20 million won is as maximum in Korea criminal law. But if parents don't want it, I don't know, but illegally, I think it would be a violation, obviously.
I see. Now, this act is indeed punishable, but let's kind of tweak the question and change the situation. Let's say that the man stole his mother's car instead. Then would this change your answer? 1, 2, 3.
Yes.
Oh, so Ji-hee chose X and Heejun chose O. So could you first explain why you chose O, Heejun?
Because if breaking a car was the subject of the punishments, I think the stealing, it will be the same context and naturally become the punishable. Rather, it seems like it's possibly more heavy punishments, in my opinion. So.
Yeah, because he didn't damage, but he actually stole the car and he took it away from his mother. Now, why did you choose XG?
Well, because I know the answer.
You do seem like you know the answer
to the situation. And like you both said, it sounds just like common sense that he should be punished for stealing it. However, it's different, and the man in the case would not be subject to punishment under what Korean law specifies in this special clause of the Criminal Act, referred to as the special exemption for relatives. And we'll learn more about this later on. Yeah.
We will indeed learn more about this because this is what we're going to discuss today. So for those who aren't familiar with this criminal law exemption in Korea, it's called 친족상도례. It's the clause 1 under Article 328 of the Korean criminal law. This grants immunity to family members for property crimes. So for those who are unfamiliar with this, Ji, could you please explain more of this law in detail? For example, what specific types of property crimes were covered in the past, and how does it define the boundary of family? A lot of questions. And why has there been a growing call to revise this act here in the country?
Well, the law of this familial exception is a Korean custom that does not punish property theft, to be exact, crimes committed between relatives, such as immediate blood relatives or spouses. And often it's expressed as like the law that does not cross the threshold. And it was introduced in 1953 when the criminal code was first enacted with the intention of minimizing state intervention in property crimes between relatives, as close relatives often manage property jointly, like together. However, over time, as traditional families have dissolved and economic life has changed dramatically, the provision has been criticized as being very outdated. And the law also emerged as a hot potato 2 years ago after TV personality Park Soo-hong's story was made public. He, in fact, filed a complaint against his older brother for embezzling about 11.6 billion won, which is about $8 million, claiming that his brother operated a management company that has represented Park, of course, because he was the TV personality for the past 30 years. but didn't properly pay him. And also recently on June 27th, the Constitutional Court of Korea ruled for the first time that this special exception for relatives clause in domestic criminal law is unconstitutional. And so to prevent social disruption, this ruling does not immediately invalidate the law. However, the court has set a deadline for the National Assembly to revise the law, which is by next year, the end of next year, and we have to suspend it by then as well.
Right, so this law is definitely going to undergo some kind of change. Now, there are actually similar laws in other countries, for example, in France and Japan, but their scope isn't as broad as Korea's, as in which kind of property crimes they cover and the boundary of families. So I want to ask you, Heejun, is this due to a unique aspect of Korean culture?
Well, in particular, in Korean cultures, the concept of family was strong as economic community. It was like natural for eldest son to take all the responsibility for the family member if they other sacrifices and show the devotions on the one eldest son in Korea. But recently, I heard the baksery about the form of professional golfer in Korea was also controversial at the moment. The swinger father over the money, and suspicions have emerged that her father forged the seal of the foundation of the baksery and secretly used for his own business. In this case, the baksery father is suspected of the perjury of the private documents. And so if the charges are confirmed, regardless of the family tie, he will be punished. And in other hand, the baksery must also have the like a debts to her father because she also raised herself as a professional golfer at the expense of her father.
Right, definitely it's because here in Korea, before in the past, we used to, a lot of people manage their assets together as a family. So the legal field thought that it would be much better for the family to manage or control these issues when it came to property disputes and legal conflicts. But now this is not the case, as we're seeing a transformation in family types and in other matters as well. So for more on this law, we're now going to invite a legal expert to our talks for more insights. We'll be right back after the break. So today we're joined by Kim Ji-soo, a lawyer working in Korea. Great to have you back on the show, Ji-soo.
Hi, thank you for having me again.
Great, lovely to have you again. So let's start with the Korean Constitutional Court's decision. So what were some reasons behind striking down this law and declaring it unconstitutional?
Well, the Constitutional Court struck down this so-called 친족상도례 law for several compelling reasons. And the first one was that the law was overly broad, applied it uniformly to all property-related crimes without considering specifics like the relationship and the severity of the crime itself. And secondly, it violated victims' rights, for example, to be heard by imposing a very blanket immunity. So it left vulnerable individuals like the elderly or disabled without legal recourse when exploited by family members. And lastly, this blanket immunity conflicted with modern principles of fairness and justice, and it definitely was out of step with international standards where similar legal immunities are not as broadly applied.
I see. Well, can you share some examples where family members were exempt from punishment despite committing property-related crimes against each other?
Well, there were several notable examples. So first, there was a mentally disabled individual who was defrauded by relatives after their father's death, but prosecution was blocked due to this family relationship. And another case was an elderly Parkinson's patient being embezzled by his own children, but they also avoided prosecution because they were direct blood relatives. And lastly, there was this celebrity case, as it was featured in the beginning. Park Soo-hong, brother, embezzled a significant amount of money from him. However, the father tried to attempt claiming responsibility to shield the brother under the law's protection. So these cases show that the law was often exploited, leaving victims without justice and illustrating the need to reform.
Appreciate sharing your insight. What about what are the next steps now that Constitutional Court has struck down this law?
Well, now that the law has been struck down, the next step is involve legislative actions. So first, the National Assembly needs to draft and pass new legislation to replace and amend the current provisions. And this process will likely include extensive consultations with legal experts, civil society organizations, and the public itself to ensure a balanced approach. And also, interim measures may also be issued in order to handle property-related crimes within families until new laws are enacted. And lastly, public awareness campaigns will be crucial to inform citizens about their rights and the new legal protections available to them.
A lot of work still needs to be done. All right, Jisoo, thank you so much for your time today. It's always great to have you on our show.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you. Right, so now we've taken a look at Korea's law that used to give family immunity to certain property-related crimes. So we also asked our viewers whether similar law exists in their countries, and here's what 3 of them had to say. If we look at the comments, Benny says, in the Philippines, we have Article 332 of our revised penal code, and that means to exempt relatives from criminal liability. This involves spouses, descendants, or relatives by affinity in the same line, and so on. Leon says Singapore's legal system generally does not exempt punishment of crime between relatives or family members. The punishment for a crime is typically based on the severity of the offense and the offender's criminal history, not their relationship to the victim. Tasmia says, as far as I know, whatever the criminal did in Bangladesh, their relatives, their friends, and their acquaintances will be exempt from the crime as long as they have no involvement in the crime in the first place. So we can see that family exemption laws kind of differ depending on the countries. But now talking about the law that was struck by the Constitutional Court here in Korea, I want to ask you guys, what are your thoughts on the court's decision to say that this law is unconstitutional?
Well, this change definitely marks a significant change to the law and the particular clause after 71 years. And it's definitely welcoming that the law, because of the law should reflect changes in family structure and economic relationships. And we're shifting from large agrarian family units to nuclear families and single-person households even. And so the decision, I think, promotes equal treatment under the law, regardless of family ties, because property theft is a crime.
Right.
And yeah, everyone should be held accountable for their actions. And individuals come before blood ties, of course. And anyone can be victimized by property-related crimes. And everyone really has the right to be protected from this.
I think that the general public opinion here in Korea is that this was a much needed change.
Right.
A lot of people thought that this law was quite outdated because these days we're not only seeing single person households, but we're also seeing married couples managing their assets differently. So I think that the general consensus was that this was the right time to kind of make changes to this law. Now, what are your thoughts on this, Heejin?
Well, I understand that when the criminal law enacted in the 1953, the kinship commercial law itself was introduced with the aim of minimizing the state interference in the internal affair of their close relatives. Of course, the proposal could be in a good way, but in the past, close relatives used to be living in the village and had a lot of common properties in the past, but now it seems not to be. So that's why I think the MG seems to be thinking that this law needs to be changed too, because time already changed now.
Right. So it's kind of time for the law to catch up with this change that we're seeing in our society. And last but not least, there are other property-related laws, a lot of them here in the country. So I want to ask you, do you think that we'll see similar changes being made to these relevant laws in the future?
Yeah, for sure, because the Constitutional Court's recent decision, it really shows the willingness to address outdated property law, and I think similar changes will be made in the future based on the evolving societal needs. So I think, for example, in order to promote fairness in the current legal system, I think changes such as perhaps measures to discourage property speculation, because that's also related to property, and also we could promote a more equitable legal system by ensuring like ownership and rights over property for the individuals, and also the traditional emphasis on family harmony that hinders the current legal system may also see some changes in the future.
We'll have to see whether those changes will be made. Now, do you also think this way, Heejun?
Yeah, same here. The National Assembly is required to make a new law as soon as possible in accordance with the constitutional inconsistency decisions. Some in the legal profession said that the punishments targeted with regulations should be made differently depending on the family closeness and crime damages. And property crime between the relatives tend to be like more brutal other than other crimes, and it does not make sense to avoid or reduce the property crime while aggravative the punishments for the crime that kills or molest relatives. And also the scope of the punishments of the should be greatly expanded, to be honest. And I think that even the family members should judge whether or not to punish the property crime differently depending on how they're having the actual tie have been formed in the futures.
I see. So today we took a look at a law that has given family exemption for property-related crimes that has been struck by the constitutional government as being unconstitutional. And meanwhile, NewsGen is here every day from 9:30 to 10 a.m. Korea time, bringing you more topics young people are talking about. Special thanks today to Chiji.
Thank you.
And Leejun.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. We are News Generation.